Hello and welcome to this episode of the Wealth Alchemist podcast. My name is Keri Norley. I am the host of this wonderfully amazing show. And today, I have a very real, raw, vulnerable message to get to the world. And in order to help me bring this message to the world is my dear friend, client, all the things. Like I think we've played every role with each other at this point, almost in like a professional way, in a friendship way, in a colleague way. Like we intermingle. He's an amazing human being on this planet. And he helps professional entrepreneurial women to expand into their amazingness. And definitely one of the reasons we are talking today is because he has been helping me as I have moved through separation and divorce. And he has been an absolute rock star in my life. And this is the conversation that we're going to have, because what we have been working through over the last, 5 months has been something that has rocked both of our worlds to the fucking core. So without further ado, I welcome you to the show, Mr. Justin Lodge.
Oh, thank you, Keri. Look, I can't tell you how much an honor and a pleasure it has been to be in relationship with you professionally, personally, as a friend. It's just been beautiful. And we've known each other over 10 years. I think we probably met sometime 2007, 2008, maybe 2010, not sure, somewhere around there, a long time ago in Sydney, Australia. And since then, our relationship, we've seen all sorts of things in terms of the professional work that we've done together. And, we've only probably met 3 times in person, I reckon. Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild. The joys of the interwebs.
The interwebs.
Okay, so thank you for that, Justin. Thank you. I adore you. I adore everything about our friendship and our relationship. So on this podcast today, we are going to tear back the curtains. I don't even know if that's the thing to say. We're going to pull open the curtains. That's what we're going to do on a really vulnerable thing. So Justin, to be clear about this, Justin was actually my first spiral client. So spiral is a technique both of us use. It is one of the most powerful things that you can go through. By the end of this call, if you're not ready to jump into spiral, seriously just do the thing. After you have spiraled, and only after you spiral, can you do the clear that Justin and I are talking about. And ultimately, for those of you who don't understand what spiraling is, it's an emotional clearing technique experience that we go through 22 emotions like fear, guilt, dogma, shame, grief. Throw in here truth, trust, love, peace, and enlightenment. That's, a lot of them. We go through these and we ultimately we clear them, and clearing them doesn't mean we clear the emotion from you, but that ultimately we clear the pattern that you're running as you play out these emotions that are all wreaking havoc in your life. And when you go through the spiral, by the end of the spiral, you are in a completely different space in life. And it's a really, really powerful journey. After that, you can go through what's called a quantum clear. And these quantum clears, you take an archetype and you embody the most positive and negative in your eyes or your experience traits and neutralize them so that you can basically start embodying this archetype within yourself. Would that be a good explanation in a short amount of words?
Yes. I mean, quantum clearing is identity repatterning, if you wanted to call it a very, very smart word, technical word. But essentially, you've got a piece of you that is really important to you, vitally important to you, but you've got conflicting emotions. Right. And so it's essentially a accelerated parts integration where you've got conflicting parts that are consistently pulling you left and right. And it leaves you in a state where you either love what you're doing, you hate what you're doing, and it's real difficult emotions. And the piece that we clear is the unconscious pieces, the unconscious blocks that you didn't know you had. And the quantum clearing process has allowed us to find those unconscious blocks and peel them back and feel those emotions. And it's not about getting rid of them. It's about integrating them and bringing them together so they act for your own best good rather than destroying you and pulling you apart.
Yes, aho. So this is what we did. Dun, 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 dun. Must be feeling silly today. What we did was we decided to do a quantum clear, and we decided to do it with each other. And we decided to do the same clear and we did it a week apart, and we have been supporting each other through this
Yes.
experience, which we did about 5 months ago, I think.
Yeah, we're about that.
I think it was about that.
Yeah.
And the clear that we did was the
Yeah.
slut. I did the slutty vixen. You did the slut.
Yes.
And so, you know, we had our own words for it, but the slutty vixen and the slut. And so today what we want to talk about is the journey that we've had as we have integrated these clears that have been really powerful. And the reason that we want to talk about this is because these archetypes are freaking taboo as fuck. And especially as a woman, right? So for me, and I want to say this because one of the things that has been so powerful in this is been working with a man to do this, because permission granted for a woman to be a fucking slut. Right? And I say this with so much love because we have so much conditioning around what slut is, what slut isn't, whether we can, whether we can't. And as women, we carry a lot of shame from conditions of years and years. I mean, centuries and centuries and centuries and generations about how this is such a terrible thing. And on the other side of it, how men get to be sluts all the damn time. Right?
Well, well, they do and they don't. And I mean, I was condemned multiple times
for being a slut.
For being slut. Yeah.
I know. Okay, I can see that. There is that, but there's also the praise in the locker room, right? You get the locker room, like, oh yeah, you got her, right? Yeah, where you're congratulated. I think more.
There is, but that's more from a male perspective. It's more about conquest at that point. Right, and that's what the locker room talk is celebrating. That's why one of the past presidents of the United States of America liked grabbing women by the pussy, right? That locker room talk, grab them by the pussy, is very much about a conquest type approach. Yes. So to some extent, it's more like a power trip than it is about celebrating embodiment of the slut, which is this embracing of pleasure and this openness to receive, right? And it's like everybody's got different complex equivalences for what this means, right?
So what we have spent the last 5 months doing is basically breaking down any fucking shit we've had around any of the pieces that come with this experience of life and what it means for each of us. Because for every single person who's listening, as triggered as you probably are here, just even like seeing the title talking about this for so many people, right? Like you get to make it what you want. Just because you say slut doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to go out and, you know, sleep with 100 men tomorrow. No. It could mean that you do, but like you get to make those choices up. And so today we're going to talk about why we did this, like what's come through for us as we've done this, and a lot about what's alive within these experiences of being the slut and the vixen and how profound. I mean, it has been 1 million, like one of the most transformational experiences in my life, truly, to really fully embody this and to open-heartedly walk into this experience. Justin has been throughout the entire process, like, Keri, go rock it. You're fucking amazing. Because I just can't, honestly, like open-heartedly available for experiencing the fullness of this and all of it. And my therapist even said to me at the beginning, he was a bit concerned about me on this path. And by like, I mean, last week he was celebrating. He's like, holy schmolies, Keri, like so amazing what you have learned about yourself because you have walked this path. It has been profound. And not just myself, but society as a whole. And it's actually, I mean, and the reason I'm bringing this conversation to the podcast is because I could hide this behind, you know, I don't have to bring this to the podcast. I don't have to bring this to the world. This is a part of my life that I could be very private. And the reason I'm bringing it here is because what I'm finding is there is so much disconnect in men and women, in intimacy, in sexuality, and it is hurting my heart. Like I have cried about this, and I am so passionate about wanting to shift this because the world doesn't, like, the world would change if people understood the depths of what I understand and what Justin understands and what intimacy is, and where, even from where we are, the depths that we know that we can still go. Right. But how much that changes the world, and how much for me, and we're talking about wealth here, that changes everything for currency on the planet and wealth, everything. Right. If we can activate into this Kundalini sexual amazing energy and bring that to the planet and into our currency, into our wealth, it changes everything. So this is why we're having this conversation today. This is the purpose of this conversation. And Justin, do you want to talk about, like, for you, what was the purpose for you doing this clear?
The purpose for doing this clear is that I've really struggled ever since my childhood experiences with feeling emotionally safe enough to express and receive pleasure. That's simple, right? It's been a really difficult piece because I absolutely love women. I absolutely love and adore relationship with my partners. And at the same time, they scare the shit out of me because of the amount of damage that was done as a result of the emotional challenges that I had to go through as a child due to family culture and upbringing, those things. And that's why I wrote 3 books about it, but let's not talk about that now. But that was the core piece for me. The core piece was feeling safe enough to be able to receive pleasure because I was blocked from feeling pleasure. And it's that simple.
It's been a thing for a while for you.
Yeah,
I mean, for a long, a lifetime.
It's been. So when we talk about quantum clears, about this real inner conflict, I had part of me that absolutely loves being touched, right? Absolutely loves physical contact, and another part of me that couldn't go anywhere near it because there was this. I couldn't trust. I couldn't trust myself in that space enough to relax because I didn't know when I was going to be attacked. Right, because that's how my inner child felt about receiving pleasure. Is that the relationships that I'd had as a child were so difficult and so up and down due to the impact of the mental health of the adults around me that I couldn't actually relax enough to receive pleasure. So that was my purpose. I just wanted to be able to step into that point of the slut as someone that was prepared to receive and give pleasure. Because it's so okay beautiful to ask for something, but being able to receive it is an entirely different matter, right?
100%. And I really want to emphasize here, because one of the things we haven't actually said is like, slut and vixen, right? Like they mean different things to me than they do to Justin. They'll mean different things to you. And what we invite in this moment is that whatever it means to you, like we said, we had to look at both sides of this, right? So for example, let's just throw out some things here, Justin, like some of these parallels, because I think a lot of people, when we go to these archetypes, it can be easy to pull out like the normal conditioning around slut, which is, it's, you're giving yourself away, no power.
There's this level of, this concept that promiscuity is bad. It's like, right. Well, that's the taboo part of it. It's that ability to be able to choose your partners and say yes, say no, and then be able to say yes 3 times in the same day if you felt like it. Right, and it's like, well, no, that's
to different people if you want.
Absolutely. Have your pot stirred multiple times.
You get whatever you want, people. Whatever you want.
Well, and so there's that investigation. It's also about, well, if you're open for that, and that is something. It's like, it's not something that you're doing because you're addicted to that, or you're doing it because there's some level of escape that's in that process. Right? It's about being able to consciously choose it if you wanted to, and then not choose it if you want to.
This is huge, right? This is huge. And this is why I'm saying this, because it is about pleasure. And I say, like, we're sitting here, I'm giggling and laughing about multiple times, whatever. But like, for me, like, it's also the journey of figuring out that maybe that isn't even what you want at all.
For sure.
Right. And part of the journey for me, and I'll speak to my purpose around this, actually, as we say this, part of the journey for me in this clear and in this experience has been to allow myself to have pleasure. And to allow myself to open up, just like Justin said, to allow myself to open up to where is my desire and my pleasure. And what even is that? What are my turn-ons? Like, what are the things that if I were to go into the world, like what turns me on? And the truth is, a lot of it has nothing to do with actual penetrative sex.
Yes.
Right. And so we can sit here and talk about slut, and you can make a lot of judgments and all these things about what you want to make up in your mind about what Justin and I have done, which we are not necessarily going to share with you. But a lot of it's probably a story in your mind, because a lot of it for me and him has been like, where do I desire pleasure? Where is that? What turns me on? And like, even today, I sent a message to one of the guys I'm dating, call him that. And I said to him, like, he said something to me and that was very, very him, and a very financial thing. And I was like, oh, when you talk finances, it really turns me on. And he was like, like, cause the intelligence, right? And this is what we entered in this conversation about intelligence. And I'm like, because I want to be met in my brain. right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
this is a really fascinating piece for me, is like, does that, like playing with, and where does that turn me on to the point of, is that enough of a turn on? What else do I want? What else turns me on? And all of that can happen before you even touch a human being.
Yes. Yes. And that's kind of like the vision. It's like, what vision do you want to create for your purpose? The purpose of Slut is different for everybody else. But then there's the next step down. It's like, well, what does that look like? And this concept of being sapiosexual, being turned on by competence, being turned on by intelligence, all those pieces. This isn't just a physical piece. It's about the spiritual piece. It's about the mental piece, energetic, emotional, as well as physical. Right. And
it's been a really, it's been a really interesting journey, like, as you know, for me to be like, I've so many of the men I've met, some of them will be like, oh man, I really connect with you spiritually. Oh, I really connect with you this way. And it's been really beautiful to meet them and see, first of all, the reflection of other people and vice versa, right? Like the reflections that we give each other, and to be met, to be seen in some of the things that I'm like, oh, you see that in me. That's beautiful. Thank you. I receive that you see that. And then to think, and this is another piece that I've had in this experience, which has been, is just meeting on the spiritual level enough, quote unquote, right? Like, does that turn me on enough that if I didn't have a physical turn on with you, because I'm not necessarily really physically attracted to you, that I'm still turned on enough that I want to keep seeing you and hanging out with you and maybe move beyond that. Right.
Yes.
And so it's been really beautiful to look at all these different aspects, the mental, physical, spiritual, energetic, and what's the last one? Emotional. Right. Because some of the guys, like, they don't want the emotional stuff. And some of the guys, they're really into the emotional stuff. Right. And like, where does it all get to play with, and what actually turns me on, and can I have it with just this? Right. And it's a really playful exploration, which opens me to find my turn-ons. Right. So even if this person isn't the full turn on, then I can be like, yeah, that was great. Thank you. And we, and this is the beautiful part of all of this, is that you get to then move up. I'll move on. Everybody gets to,
well, that's the message. The message is about the very fact that you're prepared to step into this taboo, use this taboo as a engine for personal growth. And that's the message. This is about experimentation, and your needs and your wants and your desires change over time as you grow and mature. And you go, okay, well, that didn't work, but this piece really did work.
Yeah.
Right? And you might meet somebody and you just love their passion, and you love how they do these things. But, just because the physical attraction may not be there doesn't mean that there can't be a relationship on other bases, right?
Right.
And
I know I have some interesting people in my life now that I'm like, I wouldn't have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, we're physically...
The concept of polyamory doesn't necessarily need to include the physical manifestation of love, which we all regard as having sex, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting. So if we get to like the message of it, I think one of the things for me is also, if I think about my own voice in this has been huge. Oh my lordy. This voice has been exercised and also has not been exercised. And Justin has had the messages in tears as I've been like, I didn't exercise my voice and now I'm hurt. It really hurts. It really hurts, right? Because it didn't exercise my voice. And like, it's been a huge thing for me in boundaries, right? And learning where, because if we're in this exploration, then we also get to we have our yes, we have our no, right? And
this
feeling
is it.
into these places.
It's a beautiful message, because it's not just about the voice, it's about the boundaries. And that's the heart, right? That's the heart of it. The very fact that you love yourself enough to be able to enable that voice to say, hey, this is my boundary and I'm sticking with it. Right.
Which is hard. This is not, you guys, ladies and gents, when you've been a people pleaser your entire life and getting better in the last years, like better, but not, I'm like recovering people pleaser.
Me too. Right. This is a gender-free conversation. There's a lot of us people pleasers out there. Right. Because we've been programmed like that since we've been children,
Right. And so when you start to get into this, like this slut energy, right? And so both of us have welcomed in people into our lives. And then you have to be able to know and hold your boundary and use this voice. And when you've been a people pleaser, it's amazing not how easy it can be. And like, oh man. And every experience I have, and like it's everywhere now. And it's not just with people I'm dating, but like children, my ex, my, you know, all different areas in my life. Are there ways that boundaries and things where I'm getting to express this yes and no? And I think it's kind of like, you know, I say fail fast, fail forward fast, right? The more that you do this, the faster that you move through this. And this is why Justin and my therapist have been like, holy shit, Keri, the faster you move through this, then the more that you get stronger at like, oh, I'm not going to do that, right? Like I have learned that now twice. Third time, slap myself in the ass, right? Right? And so we get to, and so this has been a really beautiful journey. And as we open up to like our pleasure is to know, like, otherwise our pleasure has no home if we can't keep it safe.
And so that's the real heart of the matter. It's about putting in those structures that, you know, are allowing you to play in a way that means that you are both safe and happy. Right. And everybody's boundaries are different for different reasons, and they change over time as we discover more about ourselves. But the most important thing is about getting into action to discover them. Right. Yes. So many of us sit there and through our own disempowerment, we choose not to engage with life. And this is one of the reasons I love you so much, Keri, is because you've taken life. But it's like the bull by the horn, to use a masculine phrase. But right. And really bloody gone for it in terms of trying to discover. And it's been fucking painful. And you haven't stepped away from it. You've just kept going and go, okay, that fucking hurt. And this is what I need to do next.
Yeah, ladies and gents, there have been some really deep pain. It has happened. There's also been some really great joy. There's also been some immense amounts of pleasure.
But as my daughter says, you know, if you haven't seen the dark, then you can't distinguish the light.
No, you can't. Systems are collapsing. The world is shifting rapidly. An awakening is upon us. As we move into the new wealth, we get to be masters of our energy and destiny. My international best-selling book, The New Wealth, Magnetize Abundance, Hold Your Wealth, and Leave a Legacy, has helped people around the world to do just that, and to bring in more money within hours of reading the book. It's the kind of book you can't put down and you read again. So people tell me. If you want to grab your copy of the book, please head to Amazon and get your Kindle or paperback version today. It's interesting because when you were saying that, it was making me think how we get to overcome our fears in order to step into this space.
Yes.
And ultimately, it's a journey of self-empowerment.
Yes.
And one of the most amazing things, and I'm going to say this has been one of the best lessons for me that I have, one of the most phenomenal empowering experiences of this has been after years of not necessarily trusting myself when I get into certain relationships, especially in I was worried having had, coming out of, I've not been shy about, like, there was toxic behaviors in my marriage. There was toxic behaviors in relationships before. And so anyone who's come out of relationships like that can feel a bit like, am I going to be safe? I don't know. Like, the behaviors that I have looked for before haven't worked for me. And am I going to attract them again? Even though I'm aware now, right? Like, this is interesting. This has been fascinating because this has been part of the journey for me. Even though I'm aware now, will I still bring that in? And I did. I did bring some of it still in, and I threw it all up, and it was an amazing, wonderful explosion. But we have to step into this in order to see it. Yeah. And I remember this, one of my lovers, and he said to me, he's like, in order to see these things is you have to be in relationship. The best way to heal is in relationship. And so as you were just saying it, it's like overcoming, like, so many people think I'm going to heal my inner, my codependency. I'm going to heal my attachment shit. I'm going to heal my inner child stuff. And I'm going to sit here on the couch and meditate about it. No. Like, it's when you actually get into relating with another human being that's where all your fucking triggers and shadow shit's going to come up to show you, oh no, I have not healed all of that. Oh, here it is for me to see. And it's so freaking powerful.
Yeah. there's so many people that talk about, oh, I need to meditate, ascend, I need to heal. The only way you're going to heal is to get out there and find the areas by being in action, right? And because that's the point of personal empowerment, is the point where you actually go and you go, these are my boundaries. Here's how I'm going to step into my power. And some of the things that you know, Keri, the things that you've gone from, instead of, you flip things around in your relationships, in the embodiment of your queen, right? And the ability to be able to ask for what you want, and to have that level of allowing someone to adore you, allowing someone to devote themselves to you. And in that devotion, right, and that expression devotion, it's not a one-way street, but certainly there's that you are enabling those lovers that you've chosen in that way to devote themselves to you. And you've been able to receive that as the queen, rather than not be afraid of all that, right? And I've loved that about what you've done, because you have some of your lovers and you are, you know, putting demands on them almost in a really sovereign way. And I love that you've chosen to do that. And it's been amazing fun. And you've learned about some shit that didn't work.
Yeah, but you know, and here's the other thing, you guys. Here's the other thing when we start to play in the slut vixen role. So, and again, this is where you want to take things. This is everything is about where you want to take things. If you're still here and listening, there's something inside of you that is 100% calling you deeper. Whether you are in a relationship, a marriage, single, you can play this. You can play this as a single woman with yourself, a single man with yourself. There are so many ways to play into this archetype. And I totally forgot what I was just going to say. What were you just saying before then?
I was talking about you being the queen and being allowing your lovers to show their devotion to you.
Ah, yes. So one of the things that has been really powerful for me is power play. Power play, right?
Yes.
And so he's right. Like, there's a lover that I have that wants me to be in charge. And it's hard for me. This is not necessarily an easy thing for me. And so this asks me to step into something that's uncomfortable. And so this is ways, again, that we can have these different healing experiences, because we step into different power plays. And some people want, you know, like in other places, we get to be more the receiver, or and even within the same relationship, like we get to play different dynamics, right? And so when we get to play into this, and I mean, I've said this, I mean, this isn't even necessarily just from this, like Hugh and I have played these roles with each other in different ways too. And it's a really powerful thing that you can do in playing in with the sexual dynamics of receiving and giving and different archetypes of who you are, where you may not feel comfortable otherwise. But when you put, and this is the other thing, again, verbalizing your needs to be met, then when you put the framework of what your needs are and their needs are, and you meet each other in these places, like amazingness can happen. Again, this is not necessarily about dating and lovers and multiple people or anything. Like, you can do this within your own relationships or people that you start to call in or whatever.
Yeah. And you know, to flip that around from the masculine perspective here, for me, that piece there is about being open to receive enough that I can accept the attention and accept the devotion without having to A, think about how to protect myself, right? Or B, not have to think about reciprocation, right? Just accepting that level of devotion. And that's okay. And that I don't have to reciprocate, right? I don't even have to think about it. You know, I don't have to be, you know, it's breaking out of that Stockholm syndrome, right? Where you have to appease your captors, right? And that comes with some of the childhood issues that we've both grown up with, Keri, right? And that then very, very much reflects into that relationship, that's being able to accept that level of devotion and know that there isn't another agenda to it, right? You're not having to second guess what's going on. And for me, that's real freedom and that power.
Yeah, it makes me think of these. No, it just disappeared. It had a moment and it's gone. Oh no, I remember. Sexual connection. I remember now. Okay. So in what you've just said, it brought to me this part of, you know, giving, receiving. And what I have found is the huge disconnection in what people think the other person wants. And I can experience this not through words, but by how people show up in their intimacy. And again,
Yes.
intimacy doesn't even necessarily have to be that I have had any penetration. And right. And you can still see how disconnected people are. And this is what I have found fascinating is there are some people who want sexually a lot more than they have ever received. And the reality is that all they probably had to do was ask for it and show somebody how to do it. Right. And be willing to utilize the voice, because what I'm seeing is like, there's a lot of women that I know that want more pleasure and sex and intimacy, and they want to have hot fucking sex. And I was talking to a friend today who's 52, and she was saying, Keri, it only gets better. I'm like, I know this is what my experience is, because when I say this to women, like people say in conditional, you know, in society that when we hit menopause, like we dry up, like, and we don't get to have sex anymore. I'm like, fuck that shit. Because what I see is there's a lot of women who are craving, desiring, like wishing for a man to show up and fuck her. Right. And to really like get into and be hot and be sexy and hot, like hot sex. And they're not getting it. And then there's a lot of men who are not getting it. And then they're going off to other places to receive it. But if you had just talked about it in your relationship and actually said, hey, could we make this a little bit more fun? How could we make this a little bit more quote unquote risque? How could we do things that could spice this up? And sometimes when I hear what spicing up means to somebody, I'm like, oh my God. Right? Like there is so much that can be done. Again, that isn't necessarily like you don't have to go into whips and chains and bondage and like kinky, really stuff. There is so much that can be done to help with intimacy. And so I say this because this has become something for me. It is for sure. I don't know, Justin, you and I have been in a conversation about it. You know, I'm sitting in this void waiting for how the fuck this is going to show up in my work. It is 100% going to show up in my work because like I'm a Taurian. So sensuality and intimacy is like everything. And I'm like busting through to be like, how can I help you people? So actually, if you're listening to this podcast, if you want to connect more into your intimacy, into your divine, amazing, all of these things, like reach out to me, talk to me about it, because this is definitely for men and women and couples coming together, because I'm already starting to see, I've been working with couples and bringing them together in their intimacy, which is sometimes in some crazy convoluted way funny now that I've just left a marriage that was because there wasn't so much intimacy in the last couple of years. But it's been like my desire. Like this is like, yes, yes, I have. But also it's been what I've been cultivating. And this is what I'm saying to you all is that even without a partner, you cultivate this with yourself. And it's because I have cultivated this with myself for the last 3 years. Well, Spiral was 3 years ago. 3 years. Then this is why. This is why I can sit here and say this story, because I was one of those people too. Right? Disconnected.
And and the piece that I think I wanted to really pull out of this conversation is that as you stepping into that personal power, you're going down into this creative flow, right? And what stops us from creative flow is the fear and the paralyzed will, right? It's like those pieces that there. This is what the entire quantum clear really gets down to. It's about clearing away the fear and paralyzed will, for stepping in and expressing that power, but also asking for what we want and then being willing to receive it. And what stops us from being willing to receive this paralyzed will and fear, and that's the most powerful parts of the clear, is being able to let go and embrace what those emotions are that are blocking you from the creative flow that comes with all this, right? And what you hear Keri here doing, she's got into the creative flow. She's no longer blocked, right? There's no longer this paralysis piece that stops a lot of us from exploring this.
It's still an unlocking. That part is still an unlocking. I'm going to say it, right? It's still unlocking. We have levels of levels.
We do. But that's the whole point about this, is to get out there and go into the action and find out where those fears are, because you don't find them, you'll never deal with them.
Right. Yeah. And in order to walk out that damn door, just even to swipe right, people, right? There's fears. Even to put your first freaking pictures out on a dating app, right? People want to ask. That's what I'm doing. I've been on a dating app. And, you know, it's like you're putting yourself out to be seen. You know, and it's interesting. I will say this has also been an interesting piece for me in this dating process. You know, hey, y'all, you guys are listening to me talk about this on a podcast. So now somebody could come along and listen to this story. And it might not be something I would share on a first date, you know? And so it's really interesting because having this public image, and it's not, you know, a public profile essay, whatever it is, and dating has definitely been an interesting journey. And I really, there's some men who go and dive in and they want to listen and they've read books and all these things. And some men are like, I'm not looking at any of it. I just want to meet you. And I'm like, thank you. Either way, thank you, right? Either way, thank you. And so it's been really interesting to have this as part of the journey because somebody could come and quite listen in. Like at this point, there's over 90, probably 100 hours worth of content just on this podcast alone that a human being could come and like literally know the entirety of my life story before we even meet. Not that they would, but like there is a vulnerability in that. There's a vulnerability in that, you know, and it has definitely brought up stuff. There's definitely been fears that have brought up from that in and of itself. And then just, like far out rejection sucks.
It does. It does.
You know,
but there's also things to learn out of that rejection.
Oh God, right? Yeah. Every one of them.
So every single one of those rejections is like, there's always something in there. You know, and maybe it's not something about yourself, but it's about how we relate to someone else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I also find, I mean, like sometimes, like I've even gotten into the point where now, like even within like 3 sentences from a person, I can tell whether I want to continue pursuing anything with them because of the way somebody presents themselves. But that only happens because you show up and learn and read the energy. And like to me, this has been, as Justin knows, a huge human behavior experiment. It freaking makes me laugh most days, really, to be honest. Even when I'm crying, I'm laughing. True story. True. I have cried and laughed in the same breath.
Yeah.
True story. And we've also had to overcome, as we've done this, not just that, but the societal conditioning, the fear of what other people will think of people. And I'm saying this to anyone, right? The two of us. But and again, both of our experiences have been very different. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean penetration or anything like this. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be a slut? And if I come out here and say like I'm, you know, like and how many people are you dating? And what? And who are you talking to? And what's going on, Keri? And it's like honestly, people are like, write a book about it because it's hilarious.
Yes.
But there's a stigma that goes with that.
There is. And so it doesn't matter what culture you come from. I live in Singapore, right? There is a very conservative part of Asian culture, particularly in Singapore, that is very, very restrictive, all right? It's not just the white Western world that has this thing that goes off everywhere, right? And there's a very, very strict level of judgment. I mean, we see all sorts of things going on, and then it's like, well, that fear is real, you know, it paralyzes us in lots of ways. But at the same time, it's like, well, if you don't get out there, if you don't enjoy the life, if you don't find the things that you want to find, then how are you going to know what's out there or not? And I can't tell you how many times I've had my heart broken, right? And I've been really, really, really painfully broken multiple times. And that's left me stopped for years at a time sometimes. And so, yes, the judgment is there. But if you're going to sit there and allow that judgment to stop you, then where else in your life are you stopped? Where else are you stopped in your wealth? Where else are you stopped? You know? So this piece about getting out there and choosing to engage with the taboo, engage with this concept, engage with a concept that automatically attracts judgment, right? I mean, this goes back thousands of years to the original tantric masters, where the area where you're going to get the most gain is the area where there's the most judgment around taboo. And so that's why I'm inviting people to step into these pieces, right? Because that's where your growth lies.
Because there's so much shadow. Like there is so much guilt, shame. There are so many things that we've both had to move through in order to say yes to any of this. And in order to say, hey, you guys, if you want to go out and have pleasure and just go and have sex with someone, even that, like, oh my God, that's a stigma. Is it okay? Can I really?
Yeah. Guilt,
really?
shame, and dogma, right? They're all there. They're all of those things that stop us from taking action, right?
Yeah. But We are allowed pleasure. In our
Mm-hmm.
God-given grace, we are allowed pleasure in our lives. So however you choose to go out and get it, be safe about it. Keep yourself safe.
For sure.
However, in all ways, right? Energetics, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, right?
Yes.
Keep yourself safe.
Yes.
But take the actions. Like, and actually, I'm going to say, right? I'm going to speak to those of you here. If you are in a marriage and you're in an intimacy-less marriage, like either do something about it, or maybe you need to leave it. Right? Like do something to make that better, because that doesn't mean that just because it is, that doesn't mean you can't fix that or repair that. It's definitely, and I've seen many couples do it. And if it's not, and you're not going to be, like, go and find pleasure in your life. And if you're a single person and you're sitting there going like, oh man, maybe I could, maybe I should, but it's too hard, or it's this or that, or whatever's going on in your mind, or this dogma or the stigma, just take the step. Like, what's the next step that you need to take? And if it's to work with one of us to help you clear your shit around this, then say yes to that.
Say yes.
Right? Because your life will be infinitely better.
Yes, for sure.
Infinitely. Like my life is, it's through this process. Like I am healing the trauma of not just my entire 44 years of living, but generations and generations and generations. And it wouldn't happen if I wasn't saying yes to this. It's changing the way that I show up with my kids. It's actually changing the way that I show up with my ex-husband. For me, I have so much more compassion for things that I couldn't have had if we were still in the marriage doing the same fucking thing. Right? Yeah. There's so much that has changed.
Let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the fact that the existential kink and the fact that people get off on that pain. They enjoy that Stockholm syndrome, that where they feel like they've got to appease their captors. And instead, what they're doing is they're appeasing themselves in terms of how they view themselves in that relationship. And that they actually are, captured in some way. And it's like, well, it's time to break out. It's time to step out of that dogma, step out of that guilt and shame, take some action. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you immediately have to embrace the slut archetype, the vixen archetype. What we're saying here is take the steps to do the emotional clearing that give yourself some freedom.
Yes.
One of the clients I'm coaching at the moment, I mean, she's an amazing entrepreneur, right? She comes from a family of entrepreneurs that have bootstrapped themselves out of a communist country, right, into Australia, right, and have managed through 4 generations to build themselves up into a completely different set of existence. But the emotional baggage that has come along with that has been huge. Right, it's not been easy for any of those generations to actually get from where they've come from to where they are now. And it's been absolutely bloody brilliant working with my client, because a lot of the things that she's clearing are to do with the journey of how they got themselves to Australia and the emotional pain as a child that she went through as a result of that absolute grim determination to bootstrap themselves out of an economically difficult situation. And so let's bring all that back into relationship. And if you're in a relationship that's not working and that you feel like you're trapped by economic circumstances, well, that's just not true. That you can make those changes. You can create the economic opportunities that you need. And lots of people have done it. Lots of people have done it through far harder situations. And you can get out there. And the way to do that is through seeing the world different, from clearing the emotional blocks that have you stopped that you didn't even know you've got.
Yes.
Sorry, a bit of a rant, Keri.
That was beautiful. It's beautiful. It's probably a really good place to start to wrap it, actually.
Yes.
Action things. Anything that we want to leave them with that are action steps.
If you want to, if you want to know
Okay.
anything about emotional clearing, right? There's a book called Clear Your Shit by Dane Thomas, D-A-N-E Thomas, T-O-M-A-S. Dane Thomas, Clear Your Shit, available on Amazon. If you want to understand the techniques that are used that allow you to go away and do this for yourself, then go and read that book, because it teaches you how to use your body in order to find and locate those emotions. It teaches you how to look at different situations and do statement clears that allow you to identify where you've got these inner conflicts going on and you've got limiting beliefs that you need to look at. And that's all there. And that's one small step you can take by yourself that will illustrate what the power is of what it is that we do.
Yes,
So the
I
next
love that
step
one.
is to choose a coach. Choose me, choose Keri, choose any one of the other people that do spiral or spiral practitioners, because we have that accelerated
Holy
process
moly.
for
It is an
getting
accelerated
to grips.
process.
That's right. Yeah,
It is an accelerated
it is.
process. It will change your life. It will change your life.
Yeah.
100%. Actually, Justin, give the 5, like the 10 sentence overview of what happened since you spiraled.
So since I spiraled, when I started spiral, I was almost at rock bottom, right? And I actually got to rock bottom during just after I'd finished
Just after a
spiral.
spiral.
Yeah. I actually got to the point. I was on Christmas Eve. I was 2018. I was in Melbourne. I'd run out of money. I burned out at work in my corporate job. I didn't know what to do next. I took some time off. I got a lot of savings. I burnt through them. I got to the point where I had no money, right? I'd paid rent for December, but it was Christmas Eve and I had no money, right? I couldn't afford to even go out and buy some food for Christmas Day for my children. As a single parent, 5 years, it was important to me that I had food for my children on Christmas Day. And I phoned a friend, and she said, "Oh, I know somebody who's distributing food to people that don't have enough for Christmas. I'll text, go meet her, and she'll give you a bag of food." And that was very rock bottom, and I just finished spiral at the time. And the very same day, that I'd accepted that bag of food, and I cried when I'd accepted that bag of food. And that very afternoon, I got offered a job here in Singapore. And so I went from the point of being at very rock bottom with all my credit cards maxed out, no possible opportunity, just and I went to this amazing opportunity in the same day. And that didn't mean that it was straight away the pressure was off. I mean, I got the food, but then because I knew that this opportunity was there, and I could say yes to it. And there's a lot of barriers to me actually moving from Melbourne to Singapore, but I had the opportunity to, if I had not done the spiral, I would not have taken the step. I would not have had that confidence. I would not have been open to receive that opportunity had I not done the spiral. And then that changed my entire life. I went from being massively in debt, to clearing that debt inside a year, to establishing a new life, to living in a vibrant city.
To having investment savings.
That's right. I've got all this cryptocurrency that we've been working on together. All these different parts of the investment are all there.
I've written. It was 3 years ago, probably almost to the day, I would guess. Pretty damn close that we did our Wealth Alchemy VIP day. And right. You declared you were going to write a book.
Yes, and I ended up writing
three books and 3 audiobooks.
Yes, and they were Amazon #1 bestsellers, each one of them, as I published.
So the power of this work is profound. It is profound. And so we both invite you in. Otherwise, what do I want to say? Otherwise, like for you on a very personal level right now, like if you've felt triggered, if you have felt inspired, if you have felt anything about, as we've gone through this process, talking about this Slutty Vixen experience, like look inside of yourself and what part of you do you want to activate that will bring in more pleasure into your life? And if you literally look at it from like, let you lead your life, what will bring me pleasure right now? Like that could be an amazingly life-changing leading question for you. And then if you come up against barriers to that pleasure, then ask yourself, like, why is that barrier there? Can I shift that? Is that a movable barrier? Most of them probably are. And if it's not, then maybe you need to leave that experience, right? Or stay or figure it out, whatever. But really start to look deep within and ask yourself that question. Why are you stopping yourself from having the greatest pleasure? I think we should end it there. Anything you got to say?
No, thank you, Keri. That's all I've got.
How can people reach out to you?
Okay, so I have a website, Justin Lodge, all one word, .info. That's my website. Come and find me there. You can get in contact with me on that website. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Justin Lodge. I'm there. You'll find me. If you want to reach out to me, I'd love to hear from you. I work with professional women and entrepreneurs. And the reason they work with me is they like the masculine structure. All right. And so that's what I bring to it. I bring a trusted masculine structure to how they want to clear themselves and go through the spiral process with me. And that's why I call it Ready to Rise, because that's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for women who are ready to rise. And I love working with women. And that is pleasurable for me. I get immense pleasure being a coach. And that's why I do it.
And you're amazing. So thank you for being on the show today with me. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. We will see you next week. Have a wonderful week wherever you are in the world.